back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, September 23rd. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Go to the $ icon in the chat. This will help create a super chat for any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it, and it just makes the show lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys every Monday through Friday. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about the Ravens picking up their first win of the season, 28-25 victory over the Dallas Cowboys. It got a little dicey at the end. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry both played well, so we'll get into that. In the second part of the show, we'll get into recapping the Sunday Night Football game between the Falcons and the Chiefs. The Chiefs improving to 3-0 on the season. We'll get into the specifics of that. We'll also get into talking about the Rams upsetting the 49ers, coming back and winning 27-24. Then we'll get into talking about the Vikings and the Texans game. Vikings improved to 3-0 on the season, another dominating performance against one of the better teams in the NFL, in the Houston Texans. So we'll get into that. And then we will preview both Monday Night Football matchups, starting off with the Bills and the Jaguars, and then the Commanders and the Bengals. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the Ravens-Cowboys game. So yeah, again, another crazy week in the NFL. And like we've been doing the first couple of weeks, we're not going to talk about every single game today. Tomorrow we'll talk about more games and, continue to do that throughout the week. But it was another wacky week, and let's get into talking about the Ravens-Cowboys game. So the Ravens coming into the game, they needed to win. I said this is more of a must-win for the Ravens than it was for the Cowboys. However, if the Cowboys were to, and this is what ended up happening, drop back-to-back home games, that wouldn't look good. And the Ravens were able to pick up the win, and like I said, did get a little dicey at the end, but let's go through the game summary really quick. So the Cowboys, they started off with the football. They punted on their first possession. The Ravens, they made a statement. They went down the field, 5 plays, 71 yards, 2.5 minutes of time of possession down the field, and Lamar Jackson from 9 yards out scored a touchdown to make it 7-0. The Cowboys answered with a field goal. So kind of a similar start to last week against the Saints for them, where the Saints were scoring touchdowns and the Cowboys were only managing to kick field goals. So the Cowboys did put up a scoring drive, but Brandon Arbery from 65 yards kicked a field goal just shy of the NFL record, and that made it 7-3. He is, right now, is he their best player? The way this season has gone so far for the Cowboys, is he their best player? He has been unbelievable. So then after that, the Ravens, they put together another touchdown drive. Lamar Jackson, actually no, this is Derrick Henry's first rushing touchdown of the day, and he had a big game here. But this was set up by a 56-yard pass play from Lamar Jackson to Nelson Agholor. So that made it 14-3. Then the Cowboys fumbled, but that didn't lead to anything. The Ravens punted. A lot of punts in the second quarter. And then the Ravens put up a touchdown drive to make it 21-3, and that was to Rashad Bateman. Lamar Jackson connected with him for a 13-yard touchdown. And then right before the end of the first half, The Cowboys kicked yet another field goal, Brandon Arbery from 51 yards out, to make it 21-6. Then the Ravens opened up the second quarter, or the second half rather. They made it 28-6. That was set up by Derrick Henry, a 29-yard run. Then a 16-yard run by Lamar Jackson, and this led to a 26-yard touchdown run by Derrick Henry. So at that point, you're like, all right, this game's over. For most of the day, I was watching Red Zone, and once this game got out of hand, I'm like, yeah, we don't need to focus on this game. Let's look at some of the other games on Red Zone. But what Dak Prescott likes to do is he starts to play really well in garbage time, and we get to the fourth quarter. Justin Tucker missed another field goal. This one was from 46 yards out. So again, not looking good right now for Justin Tucker that he's missing these field goals. We're not accustomed to seeing that. I just wanted to acknowledge Eric Fortis Jr. in the chat says, "Brethren, what's going on?" So the Cowboys, they put together a touchdown drive to make it 28-12. A lot of big plays on this drive. Prescott connected with Jacob Ferguson. Good to see him back. Jalen Tolbert, a 19-yard pass play, 23 yards to Kevontae Turpin, and then Dak Prescott on a quarterback sneak scored to make it 28-12. They went for two, didn't get it. Then the Cowboys recovered an onside kick, so they turned that into a touchdown. Prescott connected with Jalen Tolbert for 15 yards, and that made it 28-18. They went for two again, didn't get it. Ravens punted. Cowboys again scored a touchdown on their next possession. And this one, again, another touchdown to Kevontae Turpin to make it 28-25. However, the Ravens iced the game. Lamar Jackson on 2nd and 9 from the Ravens 35. They had to pick this up, and they got it. And took a few kneel downs, and that was the end of the game. And Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, running the football, they did well. Lamar didn't put up massive numbers through the air, but had 87 yards on the ground. And Derrick Henry had 25 carries for 151 yards. And that was the difference in the game. The Cowboys defense had no answers to stop that running game. And, the Ravens, they really needed this game. And they got it. So the Ravens actually ended up finishing in total with 274 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading receiver was Nelson Aguilar. He had 1 reception for 56 yards. Quiet day from Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, and Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers had 3 receptions for 20 yards. Isaiah Likely had 1 for 4. Mark Andrews was targeted 1 time, but did not catch it. So he finished with 0 receptions for 0 yards. So his quiet season continues. And then as for the Ravens, their defense had 3 sacks in this game. Marcus Williams recovered the fumble. And then for the Cowboys, Dak Prescott had a quiet day. And then, like I said, once we got to garbage time, he started to put it together in the fourth quarter. Finished 28-51, 379 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Sorry, holding back a sneeze. 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Cowboys only ran the ball for 51 yards. Jacob Ferguson was their leading receiver, 6 receptions for 95 yards. CeeDee Lamb had 4 for 67. Was visibly frustrated on the sidelines. They were talking about it during the broadcast, how they're still not on the same page quite yet. Kevontae Turpin, he had 3 receptions for 51 yards. Jalen Tolbert had 3 for 42 yards. They both had touchdowns in the game. CeeDee Lamb actually fumbled in this game. And then for the Cowboys defense, no sacks in this game. And Brandon Arbery continues his very good season. He's 10 for 10 on the season. But, yeah, too little, too late for the Cowboys. It got very interesting at the end, but the Ravens are able to pick up the win. And some of my takeaways from this game, again, Dallas's defense continues to struggle. And that's a problem. You went from Dan Quinn now to Mike Zimmer, and this defense looks worse with Mike Zimmer. If it wasn't for week 1 against the Browns, and the Browns' offense is not good with Deshaun Watson. And, we saw that a little bit more yesterday because guess what? The New York Giants picked up a win, and we'll get into that during the week, but they were able to beat the Browns. Um, you know, Dallas looked good in week 1 against the Browns. But then these last 2 weeks against the Saints, who ran all over them and Derek Carr carved them up, and then here the Ravens running game, was dominant and the Cowboys had no answers. This defense is a major concern going forward. And on top of that, the Cowboys really can't run the football. You got Rico Dowdle who, got most of the carries in this game for them, but their running game is pretty lackluster, and the Cowboys usually have a good running game. Like even last year with Tony Pollard, like was he great? No, but was still finished with over 1,000 yards. But yeah, I mean Rico Dowdle 8 carries for 32 yards, Zeke 3 carries for 6 yards, Deuce Vaughn 2 carries for 5 yards. I mean that's not going to do it. Now it does make me wonder: will they, promote Dalvin Cook from the practice squad and put him on the active roster and see if he can provide a spark for that running game? I mean, we'll have to wait and see. They play on Thursday against the Giants, but yeah, not looking good right now for Dallas. And for the Ravens, yeah, I mean, there's still some things to clean up. I mean, they allowed the Cowboys to get back in this game, and it got very dicey at the end, like I keep saying. So there's some things they got to clean up. But they really put an emphasis on the ground game, which is what the Ravens are built on. I mean, that's why you bring in Derrick Henry. And, many people were pointing to the Cowboys, saying they should bring in Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry wanted to play for the Cowboys, but that ended up not happening. And he's a Raven. And so far, he has a touchdown in every single game. You got to lean on him at times. And yesterday was a big Derrick Henry game. I mean, I don't think he's going to do that every single week, especially because now he's more on the older side when it comes to running backs, and you want to keep him fresh. But that was a game where you let him loose, and it paid off. So now for next week, the Ravens have a big Sunday Night Football matchup with the Buffalo Bills, and we'll see what the Bills do tonight against the Jaguars. And then as for the Cowboys, like I said, they got a short week. They take on the Giants at MetLife Stadium on Thursday, and that'll be the first time they're there since the 40-0 debacle last year to open up the season. So hopefully that's a little bit different for Giants fans, and the Giants are more competitive in the game, but we'll have to see. And it's interesting because I was looking at the line for that game, and it was at 6.5. Now it's down to 4.5. But we'll talk about it on Thursday. So, but let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So, with that being said, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we will recap last night's Kansas City Chiefs Atlanta Falcons game on Sunday Night Football. We'll talk about what happened in that game. Chiefs picking up another win to improve to 3-0. So we'll get into all that when we return from our first break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to get into recapping last night's Falcons-Chiefs game. The Chiefs picking up the win 22-17, and we will discuss what happened in that game right now. So the Falcons, they had that comeback win against the Eagles on Monday night. The Chiefs, pulling off another win against the Bengals. And that game-winning field goal by Harrison Butker. So going into this game, I originally did have the Chiefs, but then I switched it to the Falcons in my spread pool. Right now I have 7 wins, but it'll probably stay that way. I probably lose both Monday night games, but we'll see. But yeah, this was an interesting game to say the least. The Falcons, they lost a couple of their linemen in this game. So, you had a backup center, and there was some miscommunication at times there. And, so once that happened, and the Falcons actually, on their first drive, they went right down the field. They got the ball first. They went 7 plays, 70 yards, almost 4 minutes of time possession. And Kirk Cousins connected with Drake London, who was wide open on the play for a 14-yard touchdown. I'm like, wow, Falcons are picking up where they left off against the Eagles. And then the Chiefs, they put together they dominated time of possession in this game. I think they finished, in the beginning. But, they still had the ball. They still possessed the ball for almost 35 minutes to the Falcons' 25 minutes. But still, it felt like they had the ball for a while at times. But yeah, this drive, they went 17 plays, 75 yards. They got into the red zone, and then Mahomes threw a bad red zone interception to Justin Simmons. So at that point, I was like, wow, Falcons look good. And, but then when the injuries started to pile up, with the line, I was like, well, now the Chiefs' D-line is going to feast. And, that is what ended up happening because Kirk Cousins ended up throwing a pick. He was pressured, and that led to an interception. So, but anyways, we go to the second quarter, though. Falcons are still up 7-0. Chiefs put together a nice long drive, 13 plays, 79 yards, a little over 6 minutes of time possession, and Mahomes connected with Rashee Rice for a 13-yard touchdown. So that tied the game. Falcons then answered with a touchdown drive set up by a 50-yard pass play by Kirk Cousins to Kyle Pitts. I was hoping he would score for fantasy purposes. Well, for Kirk Cousins because I have him in fantasy, but was just short. And then Bijan Robinson scored from 1 yard out. So that made it 14-7. Then the Chiefs answered with another touchdown drive, field goal drive. Harrison Butker from 53 yards out. That made it 14-10. Both teams punted, and this is what I was talking about. Kirk Cousins threw a pick right before the end of the first half, and the Chiefs, they turned that into points. So it was 14-13 Falcons at the half, but yeah, I did not feel good about the Falcons' chances after that. And the Chiefs opened up the second half with another field goal drive, Butker from 21 yards out. The Falcons punted. Chiefs turned that into a touchdown drive, 11 plays, 80 yards, 6 minutes of time possession. Mahomes connected with Juju Smith-Schuster for a 13-yard touchdown because Rashee Rice got hurt, did come back in the game. But, Juju made up for his drop in week 1 when he would have had a touchdown, and he gets his first touchdown of the season. But Butker actually missed the PAT. So, yeah, it was 22-14. Then the Falcons answered with the field goal drive, 54-yarder from Younghoe Koo to make it 22-17. Chiefs punted to start off the fourth quarter. Then the Falcons put together a nice drive. And, it looked like on 3rd and 5 from the Chiefs 6. This is the play that everybody was talking about. Cousins throws it to Kyle Pitts. I think it was Brian. Yeah, it was Brian Cook. He was covering Pitts and doesn't turn around to look at the ball, and should have been a pass interference call, but they didn't call it. And then they went for it on 4th down instead of kicking the field goal, and they didn't get it. So many people are pointing to that as why was that not called? And then the Chiefs went 3 and out pretty quickly. So the Falcons did get the ball back. There were a couple penalties. There was illegal use of the hands to the face penalty. Then there was defensive pass interference on Trent McDuffie. And then there was another penalty on the Chiefs, a horse collar tackle. So, then the refs started calling penalties on the Chiefs. And at that point, I'm like, well, the Falcons better win this game. but that ended up not happening. 2nd and 12 from the Chiefs' 24. Kirk Cousins connected with Drake London for 11 yards. And then the next two plays, Algier couldn't get anything on 3rd and 1. And then bad play call on 4th and 1. I mean, the Chiefs were expecting a run, and that's what the Falcons did. And Bijan Robinson ended up losing 3 yards. And that was the end of the game. Mahomes, he went 26 of 39 for 217 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. The Chiefs ran the ball as a team for 128 yards in total. Carson Steele got the start, 17 carries for 72 yards in this game. Rashid Rice continues to produce 12 receptions for 110 yards and a touchdown. Travis Kelce, 4 for 30. Another quiet night for him. 2 for 17 and a touchdown by Juju Smith-Schuster. 2 for 17 by Xavier Worthy. Jamari Connor, he was the player that got the interception off of Kirk Cousins. A couple sacks in this game by the Chiefs. And then as for the Falcons, Kirk Cousins went 20 of 29 for 230 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. They only ran the ball for 82 yards. A quiet day for Bijan Robinson. 16 carries for 31 yards and a touchdown. Drake London, another decent day for him. 6 receptions for 67 yards and a touchdown. Mooney, 8 for 66. Kyle Pitts, 2 for 59. But yeah, Kirk Cousins, 2 fumbles in this game. Didn't lose any of them. Justin Simmons had the pick. No sacks by the Falcons defense in this game. But, yeah, when it comes to this game, the Chiefs didn't look great offensively. Their offense still looks a little bit off. Also, their defense, it came up big when it had to. But I feel like it's kind of taken I don't know, at least from these, first few these first few games, I feel like their defense has taken a little bit of a step back. I mean, it really doesn't matter though because they're 3-0. And we saw last year, when their offense struggled and the defense was kind of the strength of the team for most of the year, they still won the Super Bowl. So we could sit here and say, oh, man, the Chiefs, they don't look great. Well, despite that, they're 3-0. And, they got some guys banged up, of course. Isaiah Pacheco is going to be out for a while. And, this is kind of what they're going to have. They're going to be getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire back, and they did sign Kareem Hunt. So there could be some reinforcements in the running game. Although Carson Steele didn't – I mean, was he great? No, but, he was okay. And then you got Samaje Perine who could come in on 3rd down. And actually, Carson Steele got banged up in this game, but he did return. But yeah, Mahomes is still throwing some bad interceptions. That red zone pick. I mean, and it's not like he hasn't done that over the course of his career. He has, but it's just, those things you would think he would have cleaned up, but he's still doing it. And again, is it a major concern? No, because yeah, it happens. And the Chiefs still win games, and he'll come back and he'll bounce back. It's from a bad drive. But that does frustrate you at times when you see Mahomes do things like that, and you're like, he shouldn't be doing that. So, yeah, it happens. But despite that, the Chiefs won the game, and I know again, Kyle Pitts, that play in the end zone, that's what everybody's going to talk about. That would have put the Falcons at the 1, and we could be having a very different conversation. But the Falcons did get another opportunity, and they weren't able to, cash in. I mean, still, the play call with Bijan Robinson at the end of the game, that was they probably should have did something different. And, there's people probably out there that would argue, well, they should have probably kicked a field goal with Younghoe Koo, which I was kind of hoping for just, for the spread pool, because, at least if they lose 22-20, I cover the spread there, but that ended up not happening. And I get it, because you got Patrick Mahomes, and, I didn't really expect the Chiefs to go 3 and out like that, the second to last drive of the game for them. But the Falcons got the ball back quickly, and, if they went for the field goal and then they get the ball back, they would have been driving down to win the game, and they probably would have won. So you could look at it that way. But again, how many of us really would have expected the Chiefs to go 3 and out like that? You're giving the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. And, if they pick a first down, the game's over. So, but yeah, the Falcons, They drop to 1-2 on the season. They take on the Saints next week at home, so that's going to be an interesting game because the Saints coming off of their first loss of the season to the Eagles. We'll talk about that game tomorrow. And then as for the Chiefs, they will be taking on the Chargers, who could be without Justin Herbert, who got hurt and re-aggravated his. He was still banged. He was banged up going into the game, dealing with a high ankle sprain. But yeah, aggravated that even more in the game against the Steelers. And they could be without Herbert next week. So, the Chiefs right now are looking at 4-0. But yeah, an interesting game. As for the Falcons, you just got to hope that, they could make it work with the offensive line. Because the offensive line is doing a good job at protecting Kirk Cousins, in week 2. And, that first drive of the game, I was like, wow, look at the Falcons. I mean, they're ready to take off. And they end up losing this game. But I'm not worried about them, and especially when you see what happened yesterday around the league. I mean, the Buccaneers losing to the Broncos. The Falcons, they're still in this thing. And on top of that, the Panthers won yesterday too. So, yeah. Going to be an interesting division, to say the least. And as for the Chiefs, I mean, they're going to run away with theirs. So, before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again, but let me know what you guys think about this game. I just want to remind you guys once again before we go to break, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the $ icon in the chat. This will help create a super chat. Any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast, I will acknowledge it. And it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day. So any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. So, when we come back from our second break of the show, we will discuss another wacky game between the 49ers and the Rams. The Rams picking up the victory. We will get into all that when we return from our next break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are now going to get into another crazy game between the Rams and the 49ers. And going into this game, now I actually did take the Rams with the points. It was a risky pick, but the 49ers were coming in banged up themselves. I mean, not as banged up as the Rams, but, the Rams are 0-2. They need a win, and they got it. They got it. I couldn't believe it. They were down, double digits in this game, but they were able to come back and win this game. And let's kind of go through it as we've been doing with the rest of these games. So, I mean, the Rams down some offensive linemen, down Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. For the Niners, they were down Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle. All those guys didn't play in this game. But, so let's kind of get into the specifics of the game. So the 49ers were up 14-0 after the first quarter, and you thought, yep, they are going to run away with this game. But that was not the case here. I mean, their first two drives, they put together touchdown drives. Brock Purdy connected with Jawan Jennings, who had a huge day. So that made it 7-0. And then Another touchdown pass to JioSaavn Jennings. So 14-0 after the first quarter. Then the Rams answered in the second quarter with a touchdown drive to make it 14-17. Stafford connected with Tutu Atwell, who had a big day for 24 yards. And he connected with Kyron Williams for a 15-yard touchdown, who also had a good game as well. The Niners did fumble, but it didn't amount to anything. That was Brock Purdy's only turnover of the game. And you know what? Purdy actually played really well in this game, despite all the injuries that he's dealing with right now. And you could say, well, he's going up against a bad defense, but still, I mean, I was impressed by Purdy yesterday. Rams opened up with the punt in the second half. The Niners, they scored a touchdown. Again, Purdy to JioSaavn Jennings from 31 yards out. So that made it 21-7. Then the Rams, they answered with a touchdown drive. Kyron Williams from 3 yards out to make it 21-14. Then Purdy connected with JioSaavn Jennings for 32 yards. And they got into field goal range. It set up a Jake Moody 26-yard field goal to make it 24-14. Then the Rams, they answered with a field goal drive to make it 24-17. And then Jake Moody from 55 yards out misses a field goal. And that allowed the Rams to take advantage of that, because then Stafford from the Rams 45 connected with Tutu Atwell for a 50-yard pass play. And then Kyron Williams from 4 yards out scores to tie the game. Niners punted. Rams get into field goal range. Cardi from 37 yards out, their kicker, makes the field goal to put them up 27-24. And then a crazy final play. This went for 34 yards. Brock Purdy connected with Ronnie Bell for 12 yards. They actually got to the Rams 36. They did a bunch of laterals, and they came close, kind of. Not really, but still, they were making progress there, but they ended up losing this game. And to look at the stats for the game, Brock Purdy went 22 of 30 for 292 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. They ran the ball for 137 yards. Jordan Mason continues to play well, 77 yards on the ground on 19 carries. Purdy had 41 yards on the ground. JioSaavn Jennings, though, 11 receptions for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was unbelievable. You would think, well, he actually did get a new contract. But you would think he was the guy that got the massive extension, because Brandon Ayuk only had 5 receptions for 48 yards in this game. The Niners defense, they had 3 sacks in the game as well. And then for the Rams, Matthew Stafford went 16 of 25 for 221 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Kyron Williams had a good game, 24 carries, 89 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tutu Atwell, 4 receptions for 93 yards. That 50-yard reception was a big play in this game. Demarcus Robinson, 1 reception for 32 yards. Jordan Whittington had 3 receptions for 28 yards. Kyron Williams also had a receiving touchdown in this game, 2 receptions for 27 yards. Parkinson, 3 for 21, and Tyler Johnson, 3 for 20. And then for the Rams defense, they did only pick up 1 sack. But of course, Joshua Cardi was the hero in the game, kicking the game-winning field goal. He went 3 for 3. Or actually, no, 2 for 2 on field goal tries. He went 3 for 3 when it came to extra points. And the Rams get the win. That is a huge win. I didn't expect the Rams to win this game. Like I said, I took them with the points, but that's a big win for them, because they are dealing with a ton of injuries. And I was looking at their schedule. I was saying, man, this season is going to unravel for them. And especially, going up against a 49ers team that has owned them over the last several years, since the 49ers really became one of the best teams in the NFC. Because before the Niners got Nick Bosa, Sean McVay, those first couple of seasons, he owned the 49ers. But it's changed. It has changed. And this game right here was huge. And Stafford did just enough to win this game, and Brock Purdy played really well. It's just it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. And, talking about the 49ers, is there concern? I mean, I guess there are some concerns. I would say, like, for the defense, what was going on there? And when it comes to the Niners defense, that's a strong unit. And, they had a 14-point lead and they weren't able to hold it. So I do worry about the defense a little bit. I mean, they're still missing some key guys. Dre Greenlaw, obviously. But, yeah, and the 49ers back end, the secondary, that's something that has always kind of been a little bit of a concern, and that, that showed to be an issue yesterday when you see, Tutu Atwell get that 50-yard play to set them up. Well, it's not good. So there's some things they got to clean up. I mean, Brock Purdy still played well despite missing, most of his weapons. Juwan Jennings had a big game. I mean, if he's going to play, I don't expect him to do that and have 3 touchdowns a game. But, with Deebo Samuel being out and George Kittle being out, if Juwan Jennings can play like that, that's good. And then Brandon Ayuk is going to eventually get it going. So, and Jordan Mason has done a good job running the football for them. So, I'm not concerned. Well, I do have some concerns, but I wouldn't be hitting the panic button with the Niners. The Niners are going to be okay. They're just kind of going through it right now. It's just, and they went through this rough patch in the middle of the year last year. Now they're kind of going through it at the beginning of the year. They go up against the Vikings last week, and we're going to talk about them in the next segment. The Vikings are really good. The Vikings are a very good team right now. And, you're going up against the Rams, who are a divisional opponent. You still got Matthew Stafford on that side of and, Sean McVay, of course. But, yeah, they should have won this game. The Rams are dealing with more injuries than the Niners are. I know the Niners are missing a lot of their playmakers, but look at the Rams. Their top receivers are Tutu Atwell and Demarcus Robinson. They're down Cooper Kupp, they're down Puka Nacua, they're down Tyler Higbee, who hasn't played at all this year. And on top of that, you got a young defense that continued to struggle yesterday. Niners should have won that game. With all the offensive line issues for the Rams, the Niners should have won that game, but didn't happen. And that is a huge win for the Rams. If they could tread water until they get some of these guys back, they could be in good shape. Because again, this is a team that I had making the playoffs, and a win like that, that's huge. But next week now, it doesn't get easier when it comes to going up against good defenses, because then they take on the Bears defense, which is very good. And Caleb Williams, threw a couple of interceptions yesterday, but, he started to get it going a little bit. And the Rams defense is not great. So that's going to be a tough game for the Rams next week. They'll be taking on the Bears in Soldier Field. So, and then for the Niners, they take on the Patriots at home. So I think if they don't beat the Patriots, that's then maybe you could be getting closer to that panic button. But I think they should be able to bounce back in that game. The Patriots, we saw them going up against a good Jets defense with a bad offensive line. We saw what happened there. The Niners, they should be able to take advantage of that. But, yeah, the Rams improved to 1-2. The 49ers dropped to 1-2. And if you look at the NFC West, the Seahawks are 3-0. They're on top of the division. The Cardinals lost yesterday, so you got a few 1-2 teams, and you got one 3-0 team. And you would think, oh, that's the 49ers. No, it's the Seattle Seahawks. Niners are 1-2. But, yeah, I do have my concerns, like I said, but they're going to be okay. They're going to get these guys back. Like Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, they should be back within the next couple of weeks. And then McCaffrey soon after that. And I think once you get everyone back, they're going to get it going. They're going to get it going. But, despite all those injuries, Brock Purdy still played well. So that's encouraging. They still got the offensive line. And, it's not like he doesn't have anything. You still got Ayuk. Juwan Jennings is a good player. And Jordan Mason's been running the football well. So, again, they're another team that needs to tread water a little bit as well. And I like their chances to tread water as opposed to the Rams, because the Rams got injuries everywhere on offense. And hopefully Matthew Stafford continues to stay healthy, because if he gets hurt, they got nothing. But this is a big win for them, and let's see what happens next week when they take on the Bears, another good defense. So, and as for the Niners, the Patriots is a get-right game. It's at home, so they should take advantage of that and win that game. But if not, that's we got some problems. Then the alarms might be sounding off. So, but let me know what you guys think about this game in the comments. What were some of your takeaways from it? Big win for the Rams. So we're going to take our next break. And then when we come back, we will talk about, I guess the best team in the NFC right now, the Minnesota Vikings. They blow out the Houston Texans 34-7. Another impressive day by Sam Darnold. That defense. We'll get into all the specifics on this game when we come back from our next break. But yeah, it does make you feel, as a Giant fan, it makes me feel a little bit better, seeing how they're playing against, how they played against the Niners and how they played against the Texans. Because, seeing that game in person, I was like, man, I thought the Giants could win this game. Well, look at what the Vikings are doing right now. It's impressive. So that's what we'll discuss when we come back. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we are now going to get into talking about the Vikings and their 34-7 victory over the Houston Texans. So the Vikings last week, they beat the 49ers. And look, I didn't know what to do in this game in terms of picking, because I was like, the Vikings are playing really well. Texans, they've been looking good. I didn't know what to do. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the Texans in this game and see what happens, even though I did not feel great about it. And early on in that game, I was like, yep, made the wrong decision. Because a lot of times you could really just tell from the start of a game, like, oh yeah, I already lost this game. And that was the case here. The Vikings, from start to finish, they dominated this game, but on both sides of the ball. So let's get into that. We'll go through the specifics of it. So the Vikings, I think they started off with... the Texans started off with the football, and literally the first play of the game for the Texans was an interception. C.J. Stroud throws a pick, and the Vikings, they turned that into 7. Sam Darnold connected with Justin Jefferson from 6 yards out. Then the Texans, they go down the field, and Kymie Fairbairn, who's been money this year, he misses a 54-yarder. So already, yeah, you could tell, not going to be the Texans' day. Vikings cashed in, scored a touchdown. Darnold connected with Justin Jefferson for 28 yards, and eventually they get down in the red zone, and he connects with Aaron Jones from 8 yards out for a touchdown. Aaron Jones has looked good for the Vikings, and he will be making his return to Lambeau Field next week when they take on the Packers, and we could be seeing Jordan Love. He could be coming back, and the Packers are 2-1 without Jordan Love. 2-0 without Jordan Love, but 2-1 overall. Because he did play, of course, in week 1. But, then the Texans, they punted. Vikings punted to open up the second quarter. A lot of punts. All punts in the second quarter. So, yeah, it was 14-0 at the half. Then the Vikings, they opened up the second half with another touchdown drive. Darnold connected with Josh Naylor from 4 yards out to make it, or Jalen Naylor from 4 yards out to make it 21-0. Both teams punted again. Then the Texans actually did get on the board. Stroud connected with Cam Akers from 8 yards out to make it 21-7. Then the Vikings, they answered with a field goal to make it 24-7. Stroud threw another interception. Vikings turned that into a touchdown. Aaron Jones, 39-yard run on this drive. And then Darnold threw yet another touchdown to make it 31-7. That was to one of the tight ends in this game, Johnny Munt. The Vikings just dominated this game. Texans turned it over on downs. Vikings kicked another field goal. And that was the final score, 34-7. Nick Mullins actually came in, I guess, to take the final kneel down in this game. Because when I was going to look at the box score, I saw Nick Mullins on here. I'm like, oh, he actually came in at one point. But yeah, Darnold, another efficient day, 17-28, 181 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, but was sacked 4 times. But it didn't matter. Aaron Jones, another great game for him. 19 carries, 102 yards. Also had a receiving touchdown in the game, 5 receptions for 46 yards and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson had 6 for 81 in the touchdown. Jalen Naylor, 3 for 31 in the touchdown as well. A couple of picks by the Vikings. Like I said, they got to Stroud 5 times, 5 sacks. This defense has been playing really well. And then for the Texans, yeah, rough game for C.J. Stroud. 20 of 31, 215 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Texans really did not run the ball in this game. Stephon Diggs making his return to Minnesota since the trade. The trade to the Bills. And then, of course, got traded to the Texans this offseason. 10 receptions for 94 yards. Nico Collins had 4 for 86. Tank Dell 5 for 62. Like I said, 4 sacks by the Texans defense, but yeah, they the Vikings looked like the much better team in this game. And again, it's like these first few weeks, last week I was like, maybe the Saints are legit. And then all of a sudden we see what happened yesterday and you're like, oh, well, now I don't even know. For the Vikings, I feel like it's different for the Vikings. I think the Vikings are better than the Saints. Well, they are better than the Saints now, especially at this very moment. I would put the Vikings. Right now, the Vikings are playing like a top 5 team. They look like right now. Not only that, they look like the best team in the NFC. I mean, look at who they've beaten. Take away the Giants. They've beaten the 49ers. And now they've beaten the Texans. And many people look at the Texans as, a very good team. A team that, many people, including myself, expect to take that next step. And I know there's going to be some people that say, well, the Texans haven't really proved themselves yet. And you could also make that argument, but the Texans have a lot of talent on their team. C.J. Stroud is a very good quarterback, and they shut that offense down. Now, you could also say, with the absence of a running game, because Joe Mixon didn't play, that kind of changed things here. But I think even with Joe Mixon, the Vikings are still winning this game. And the Vikings, on both sides of the ball, look really good. And on offense, they're still missing guys. Like and I keep saying it, you get back Addison, you get back T.J. Hawkinson, this offense is only going to get better. Sam Darnold is playing really well. And we saw Sam Darnold in Carolina a few years ago where, they started off 3-0. This is different, though. This Vikings team is so much better than that Panthers team. Even though that Panthers team still had Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore. But, this Vikings team's got Justin Jefferson and, you got Aaron Jones and you're going to get Addison and Hawkinson back. Of course, Christian McCaffrey, of course, is, the best of the best. But Justin Jefferson is the best of the best when it comes to receivers. So, yeah, they look really good. And defensively, too. This was a unit a couple years ago that really struggled. And Brian Flores, last year and into this year, this defense is much improved. And, bringing in Andrew Van Ginkel, I kept saying Anthony Van Ginkel, Andrew Van Ginkel, Jonathan Grenard, bringing him in as well. Team looks really good. And as for the Texans, this was a team that did, struggle a little bit at times on the road. Now, in bad weather, we saw how they played, against the Ravens in that playoff game. That was outside, that was in cold weather. This was in a dome, and they struggled. So that's something to keep an eye on. I know they played well against the Colts. Colts defense is not great. The Vikings defense, they're a pretty good unit. And yeah, they made the Texans look silly. 34-7. And, again, you got to give props to Sam Darnold. For the moment, I mean, we know J.J. McCarthy is looked at as the future, and, he's out for the year. But, good for Sam Darnold. Because since the Jets, he went to the Panthers, then he's, with the 49ers backing up Purdy. Now he's with the Vikings, and looks good. He's looked good so far. And actually, let's kind of look at his stats through week 3. Because, again, 4 more touchdowns, no interceptions on the day. I did lose a fumble in this game, I believe. But, actually, no, he did fumble, but he didn't lose it. So, Darnold through 3 games, 657 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. It's pretty good. That's pretty good. He has looked solid. And now they take on the Packers next week. The Packers look good, even without Jordan Love. Now they're probably going to be getting him back for this game. That's going to be one of the best games of the weekend next week, Vikings-Packers, because the Packers look good. So, and then as for the Texans, they take on the Jaguars, and we got to see what happens tonight with the Jags, because they play tonight against the Bills, and that's a must-win for the Jags. Otherwise, they're going to fall to 0-3. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not really, concerned about the Texans after this loss. I mean, yeah, they got blown out, but, I mean, they lost to a good team. The Vikings are a good team. And, as long as Sam Darnold continues to play like this, they're going to be a tough team to go up against. And they just have an overall solid roster. And, Kevin O'Connell is a good head coach. And, yeah, no, they look good right now. But we'll see what happens next week. I mean, they could lose like 31-7 to the Packers. And they're like, oh, well, guess the Vikings aren't good either. What I've seen through these first few weeks is we don't know who's good. It's tough right now. But that's really what happens early on in the season is you're trying to get a feel for who's good and who's not. I mean, you still kind of have an idea, but, then some teams will like lay an egg. Like yesterday, the Saints losing, you're like, and they only put up 12 points. It's tough. But, I mean, I'm not ready to just completely jump off of the Saints bandwagon now just because of that loss. But, I mean, they scored 40 points the first 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden you only scored 12. And you look pretty pedestrian on offense against a defense that has not been great the first 2 weeks, but they were good yesterday. So but we'll get into that tomorrow. Again, for this game, I mean, the Vikings, they played a good game on both sides of the ball, and now they take on the Packers. And we talked about this Vikings schedule as it being brutal, and so far they've proved a lot of people wrong, including myself. So, I think I only had them at, 6 wins? Well, 6 or 7 wins around there. But right now they're halfway there. And we're in the beginning of the season. So, this is a team to watch out for. But, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. What were some of your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. Yeah, I mean, they continue to play well. And their schedule, not easy when you looked at it at the beginning of the year. And they beat the 49ers, and now they beat the Texans, another team that many people are high on, including myself. So, yeah, we'll see what happens going forward, though. But, props to Sam Darnold and that defense, Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson. They look good. They look good. So, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, we'll get into previewing both games tonight. We got a doubleheader. We got another doubleheader next week on Monday night as well. Now, both games, they will be played. Well, one of them is going to start a little bit earlier than the other, but yeah, so they're going to be doing that. There's going to be quite a few of them this season. So we'll get into all that when we come back from our final break. Jaguars and Bills, Commanders and Bengals. Those games will conclude the week for us. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully, I can get to at least 8 and just go 8-8 for the week. That would be good. I'll take that. But I have a feeling that, the universe is going to say, no, you got 7. That's all you're getting for the week. So, that is what we're going to get into when we come back. So for one final time today, stick around as my camera glitches out. I'll fix it during the break. Stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to now get into previewing both of the Monday night matchups, Jaguars and the Bills, Commanders and the Bengals. So let's get into that. So for the Bills and the Jags, we'll start off with them. The Bills coming off of that big Thursday night football win last week against the Dolphins. For the Jaguars, they dropped another game at home, losing to the Browns 18-13. And the Jaguars don't look great. Offensively, they really can't seem to get anything going. Trevor Lawrence continues to struggle. And, going into this game, the Bills are at home. It looks like the odds are stacked up against the Jags in this game. Now, I will say I did take the Jags with the points here. I don't feel great about it, but I just feel like the Jaguars are going to play desperate tonight and they're going to be competitive. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bills beat the brakes off of them, as you would say. Right now, so the line opened up at 3.5. Now it's at 5.5. That's why I took the points. 5.5 is a lot, and I feel like the Jags are going to be desperate in this game, and they're going to try to, I think they're going to look a little bit better than we have seen, but we'll see. Maybe I'm a little bit optimistic because when you look at, the rankings for these teams, they're both not, when it comes to throwing the football, not throwing for a ton of yards. The Bills are 28th in passing yards per game. Josh Allen really didn't have to do that much last week. James Cook had a big game. The Jags are 26th. Then rushing yards, they're middle of the pack. James Cook had a big game last week. I expect him to produce again tonight. The Bills are 15th in rushing yards per game. The Jags are 13th. So I think that's something that they're going to have to lean on is, get Travis Etienne going. Then and then in terms of points per game, the Bills are second and the Jags are 29th. So when you look at that, again, doesn't look well. It doesn't bode well for the Jags. Then on the defensive side of the ball, the Bills are 10th against the pass, giving up an average of 193.5 passing yards per game through these, first couple weeks. Jaguars are 30th, giving up an average of 262. And then against the run, the Jags actually do a good job at stopping the run. They're top 10, giving up an average of 103 yards per game in terms of rushing yards. And the Bills, their defense is 22nd at stopping the run. So something to keep an eye on tonight. Travis Etienne, lean upon him. And then for both defenses, both are 9th. They're giving up an average of 19 points per game. I mean, the Jags, they had a 10-point lead against the Dolphins, and they blew that. They could be 1-1 right now. And then they did only give up 18 points. I mean, one of them was a safety against the Browns. So, I mean, the defense, hasn't been terrible for the Jags. It's the offense that really has to get it going. For the Bills, their defense has been playing well, but, Josh Allen in that offense, these first 2 weeks. I mean, in week 1, it was Josh Allen playing hero ball. Last week, it was James Cook doing his thing. So, I expect more of that. But for the Jags, leaning on Travis Etienne, get some of your other receivers going, get Christian Kirk more involved, get your rookie Brian Thomas Jr. involved, because he had a big catch last week against the Browns. It's going to be an interesting game. This game is at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I mean, I expect the Bills to win this game. I did take the Jags with the points. Right now, the over-under is 46.5. I mean, I take the over in this game. I do, like I said, I do think the Jags are going to look different. I think they're going to be competitive in this game, like I said. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because you're playing in Buffalo, and that crowd is going to be really into it. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to say the over hits. I'm going to say it's a high-scoring game, but I'm going to say the Bills win 31-27. I'm going to say that's the final score. Like I said, I think this Jags offense is going to get it going here because they have to. You have to. You're 0-2 right now. You're on the doorsteps of going 0-3. And then you take on the Texans, who are coming off of a blowout loss. So, and that's a home game for them. So you really got to – this is a game where you got to win this game. You got to rise to the occasion, and let's see if they're able to do it. And really, this is on Trevor Lawrence too. You got to get it going in this game because he has not looked great these first couple of weeks. So we'll see what happens. I mean, the offensive line for the Jags, I mean, that's been a problem. The Bills, their defenses look solid these first 2 games. So we'll see what happens here, but I got the Bills winning, but I got the Jags covering. So we'll see how that goes. And then the next game that we have is the Commanders and the Bengals. So the Bengals coming off of that tough loss against the Chiefs last week, 26-25. The Commanders winning on 7 field goals against a team that scored 3 touchdowns. Now, that team did end up winning. The Giants ended up winning. So, right now, I could be happy. But they're going up against the Bengals. The Commanders' defense is not great. I mean, the Bengals' defense as well, it's not... They're going to be missing some guys in this game. I mean, I like the Bengals to win this game, pick up their first victory. Jaden Daniels, it's kind of been a mixed bag for him so far. He still has no passing touchdowns yet, but he has run the ball effectively so far. Looking at the league rankings for these teams, so the Bengals are 16th in passing yards per game. The Commanders are 19th. However, when you look at the rushing yards per game, I mean, the Commanders, they're a running team. 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards per game, 176.5. And the Bengals are only averaging 72 yards rushing per game. They're 31st. And then points per game, Bengals are 22nd. Commanders are 15th. Then on the defensive side of the ball, the Bengals are actually giving up an average of 136 passing yards per game, which is first. And the Commanders are 20th. So I think this is a game, you're getting T. Higgins back. I think this is a game where Joe Burrow in that offense is going to ball out. I think T. Higgins and Jamar Chase get it going this week, especially Jamar Chase with now T. Higgins back. The Commanders and the Bengals, when it comes to rushing yards, the Bengals are 29th, giving up an average of 159.5 rushing yards per game. The Commanders are 16th, giving up 120.5. So we'll see. But I think the Bengals, they're going to be airing it out a lot in this game. So, and then for points allowed, as my camera decides to do this to me. For points allowed, the Bengals defense is giving up an average of 21 points per game, which is 18th, and the Commanders are giving up an average of 27 points, which is 29th. But that was because, I mean, the first week against the Bucks, Bucks put up 37 points against them. So, and then with the Giants, they only scored 18 points despite, they didn't have a kicker. They would have got in the 20s, but they didn't have a kicker. So, but yeah, I expect the Bengals to get it going here offensively. I mean, Joe Burrow has not looked bad. I mean, it played a little bit better last week. I expect him to go off with that offense. And, the Commanders, they don't have, the offensive line I don't think is great. But, Jane Daniels will make plays. He's going to have to, throw the ball if they're trailing by a couple of scores. I mean, if they fall down by a couple of scores in this game and the defense isn't getting any stops, then, yeah, it's going to be a long night for them. But, if they can keep it close, Brian Robinson Jr. has done well running the football this year. Jane Daniels, the elusiveness with him, I mean, he's making plays with his legs, but you want to see him, throwing the ball more through the air, get Terry McLaurin and these pass catchers involved. But, yeah, I mean, if you get into a game where your defense isn't getting any stops and the Bengals are having their way with your defense, yeah, it could be a long night. So I like the Bengals in this game. They're a 7.5-point favorite. I'm gonna say they win 31-17. I think that's my my prediction there. But let me know what you guys think about that. How do you see this game playing out? How do you see Jaguars-Bills playing out? Let me know in the comments. So, yeah, and this will get us concluded for Week 3. But like I said, we'll go through the rest of the games throughout the week. There was a handful that we didn't get to today. We'll talk about the Eagles game, Eagles-Saints. That'll probably be the game that we talk about in, halfway through the show because I want to recap these games tomorrow. And then we'll get to, some of the other games that we didn't get to today. And it was another wacky week in the NFL. Just when you think you might have a grasp on what's going on, you don't. So, yeah, I wanted to get into actually the Panthers game, Panthers-Raiders as well, because the Panthers won a football game. So we're going to get into that one tomorrow. Like I said, we'll get into Eagles-Saints. And there's a couple of candidates for the final game, the final segment we'll talk about tomorrow. But, yeah, that's basically how tomorrow's going to be. So you kind of got a little preview as to what we're going to cover. But, yeah, another interesting week. We got 2 more games tonight, so let's see what it brings us. Right now, when it comes to fantasy, I'm definitely going to win one league, but I might go 1-4 this week. So, in one of my leagues, in my family league, I'm up by 11. I have the Bengals defense and Evan McPherson, but my cousin has Jamar Chase and Brian Robinson Jr. So that doesn't look good for me right now. And then in my main league, I am up by 7. I have Jamar Chase, but my friend has the Bills defense, Josh Allen, and Jaden Daniels. So that doesn't look good. Doesn't look good for me. This is the league I'm ravaged by injuries. No Kittle, no Debo, and no Puka Nacua. I'm hoping Nick Chubb comes back soon, but I'm not counting on it. I think he's gonna, because they're saying he's gonna come back middle of the season. I hope that's not the case. I hope he's back sooner than that, but we'll see. Yeah, that league's not looking great right now with all my injuries. Brock Purdy actually did really well for me, got 25 points, but yeah, I made some big mistakes in my draft. Not taking Saquon Barkley is really hurting me right now, because he just continues to play well for them, which I knew, and I drafted him in a couple other leagues, but for some reason I was like, I'm going to be a little bit different here. So, but I probably am not going to win that league, but I will say Jamar Chase is playing against a bad defense. T. Higgins is back, so maybe this is a game where he really gets it going, and he has one of those games where he drops like 40 points and has 3 touchdowns like he did last year against the Cardinals, and he had the 3-touchdown game against the Chiefs as well a few years ago. So I can't believe I'm saying a few years ago already. But yeah, hopefully he gets it going. So, but yeah, with that, that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. My camera continues to, act up. So we're just going to wrap it up here. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit.